As we continue the process of building a simple model family, let's direct our attention to adding solid geometry. I'm in a file called Adding Solids. We have a layout of reference planes and constraints and parameters that we created in the Reference Planes, Parameters, and Constraints movie. And I'm going to start my work here in the Plan view. And I'll go to the Home tab and create a solid extrusion. It's probably the simplest form of 3D solid that we can create. Now Revit allows us to create both solid geometry, which represents actual physical solid things that we could touch, and then void geometry, which will cut away from the solid geometry to make more interesting or complicated forms. We'll look at void geometry in the next movie. Here I'm going to just change to a simple rectangle shape. And I'll go ahead and move my mouse over here, and you'll notice that it will automatically snap to the intersection between the two reference planes. So that's a pretty good thing. We'll go ahead and click there, and then we'll snap to these two reference planes and click here. And then Revit will offer to lock those relationships, which I will do by clicking each of the lock icons. This will keep the geometry constrained to those reference planes, and since the reference planes are so critical to forming the form and function of our family, that makes a lot of sense to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click Finish to create our simple form. And I'm going to click over here in the 3D view, and on my view cube, pick the little top corner right here. That will reset the 3D view so that I can actually see what we've created. And what you'll notice if you look at the 3D view and the two elevation views is that we've got this big slab of material sitting down on the floor. And the reason for that is the depth of the extrusion that we created was set to 1 foot. That was just the default. Now, all we have to do is I'm going to come over here and click in the front view. I'm going to grab this top shape handle and drag it up and snap it to our top reference plane and then lock it. And then I'll grab the bottom shape handle, drag it to the bottom reference plane and lock that as well. And so that moves our slab of material up into the air, and then I'll click back in the floor plan view, and it's a pretty good idea to go back to the ribbon and click the Family Types button and give this model a flex. So I'm going to try the 7-foot variation, click Apply. Everything seems to be working okay. Let's go back to 8 foot, click Apply, and then click OK. So every time you create something, it's a pretty good idea to go ahead and flex it and make sure everything's working the way that you expect. Now the next thing I want to do is create a solid sweep. To facilitate that, I want to get this extrusion out of my way in the plan view. So I'm going to use the little sunglasses that we learned about in a previous movie. And I'm going to temporarily hide the extrusion element in plan only. Notice how it's still displaying in the other views. The next solid form that I want to create then is a solid sweep. And you can find the button for it here on the Home tab. And a sweep, as you can see from the picture there, takes a profile, a two-dimensional profile, and it pushes it along a path. And that path can be 2D or 3D, as you can see there in the illustration. So I'm going to go ahead and click the sweep. And we're going to use a sweep to create the rail going all the way around our pool table. So the first step is to sketch the 2D path. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to start off with a simple rectangle, but before I start drawing the rectangle, I want to actually change the offset value right here to 3 inches. And the reason for that is I want the rectangle to be slightly larger all the way around than my slab that I already have. Now the reason I hid the slab was because I want to be sure that Revit is snapping to the reference planes. If the slab was still there, it would have actually snapped to the underlying slab. And it's much better to associate your geometry with the reference planes because they're what's driving the geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and click there, start to drag. Now, if your shape is doing this, if it's on the inside, all you have to do is tap the space bar and that will flip it back to the outside. And I want to snap to the other reference planes over here. And then I'll go ahead and click Modify. Now I'm going to click the Line tool and let me zoom in so you can see where I'm clicking. Go to this intersection right here and then that intersection there and draw a short little 45-degree line. Click the Trim tool and trim that corner up like so. And now I'm going to repeat that process on each of the other 4 corners. That's the shape of my 2D path. As you can see, I have a nice chamfered corner now at all 4 corners. Now, before I finish the path, I want to direct your attention over here to the 3D view. I'm going to click over on that title bar, and we'll notice that the path is actually drawing down on the ground plane, and I really don't want it to be down there. I could get away with it, but it actually makes more sense to me for it to be up at the height of the actual surface, the playing surface. Now, if you recall, in the reference planes movie, we actually named the reference plane for this purpose. So the way I'm going to take advantage of that is to use the Set Work Plane button. I'm going to click on that. The last time we saw this dialog is when we created an extrusion roof, and at that time we did pick a plane. This time I'm going to open the list, and you'll see that my named reference plane, playing surface, is available there. And when I choose that, you'll see that blue plane there jump up to the height of the playing surface. And when I click OK, you'll see the sketch line jump up there as well. So now that I have the sketch at the right location, I'll go ahead and click the Finish mode here. And that completes the first step of the sweep. So we have the path now. Now direct your attention to this symbol right here. It's sort of like a cross symbol. You can see that in all 4 views. I'm going to go to the left elevation view, which is looking right at that. And I'm going to zoom in on that area. And that's the plane that we're going to draw the profile on for our bumper rail that's going to sweep all the way around the pool table. Now we could draw the shape using the by sketch method right here. What I'm actually going to do is load a profile that I've previously drawn for you. So your 2 options when you're building a sweep are to sketch the shape manually, or you can go to the application menu, choose New Family, choose the Profile Template. That gives you a 2-dimensional family. You draw any 2D shape that you want to draw. Make sure it's a closed shape, save it, and then you can load that into other families to use as a sweep. I've already done that work for you. So if we click on Load Profile, and go out to the Exercise Files, Chapter 12 folder, you'll find a rail family in that folder that we're going to use for this purpose. Go ahead and open that up. So now I've loaded the profile, but when I open the list, sometimes it doesn't appear right away. So usually you have to click the Select Profile button and then open the list, and that will force it to refresh the list and the rail will appear. So I'm going to choose Rail, and you'll see the shape appear in my elevation view. And you can see that there's a little gap between the shape that I've drawn and the edge of the pool table slab. You could actually just move this. You can actually move it in any direction. I'm going to undo that. You can select on it and use the temporary dimensions if you know how far you want it to move. Or you can even use your familiar modify commands. Like in this case, I'll align to this reference plane the reference plane that's built into the profile family. And that will snap it right over there. So any of those methods will do the trick. I now have the profile positioned in the correct location. Incidentally, in your own profiles, if you draw one and it's not pointing the right way, on the options bar you have a flip button and you can actually mirror it around itself and flip it, so that, or rotate it as well. So that will be helpful if you accidentally draw it the wrong way. So now all I have to do is click the Finish mode, and that will create the sweep. And the best way to look at that is going to be over here in 3D. Now the 3D view is currently in wireframe. So let's change that to Shaded with Edges. Zoom in just a touch and hold my shift down and drag my wheel, and you can see it's looking a lot more like a pool table every minute.